Good morning, ladies. Today our learning target is I can identify character relationships by evaluating the character's words and actions. So today we're going to take a look at the story Unexpected Fortune, and as we do our first read, I would like for you to pay attention to the relationship between Claire and Marsha. So Claire opened the blinds to her father's hospital room and watched a bar of sunlight slice across his face. She walked over to his bed and straightened the pillow behind his head. Her father smiled. Claire hated how the nurses never paid attention to detail. When she came to visit, his blankets were often pushed to the foot of the bed, or the remote was on the floor. Sometimes Claire's father was too weak to bend down and reach it. "No practice today?" Claire's father asked in a raspy voice. Claire shrugged in response. It was the second time that week that she had skipped swim practice to visit her father after school. Normally she only saw him 2 Saturdays each month. She didn't mention these extra visits to her mother. Claire's mom hardly ever spoke to her father, especially since he married Marsha. It was strange that Claire liked her father more since he got sick. She enjoyed helping him. Sometimes she held a cup of water to his chin while he drank from a straw. Other times she just did her homework while he slept. "We'll head to the lake when I get better and you can show me your butterfly stroke," Claire's father said. She knew he was just trying to be nice. Claire always asked the nurses about his white blood cell count. They didn't tell her much. In biology, she was learning how cells divide. She knew that the same DNA sequence repeated over and over in each cell. It made her think of looking in a mirror and seeing her image repeated over and over. But in biology class, they never mentioned what happens when the cells divide too quickly. Claire found out for herself when she researched tumors on the internet. She learned that her father's tumor probably happened because some cells wouldn't stop dividing. The tumor was in his brain. Claire studied his face carefully. Everyone always said they looked alike. Same chubby cheeks, same mischievous glint in their narrow green eyes. Lizard eyes, her father called them. Hers were speckled with golden flecks. The other day her biology partner Justin said that her eyes were pretty. She smiled, but the compliment made her feel sad. Her father's eyes didn't have the same spark. His cheekbones stuck out prominently. He had already dozed off again. They didn't look anything alike anymore. Claire glanced at the clock. She wanted to leave before Marsha arrived. Claire hated Marsha's lectures. She said Claire's father needed time alone after his treatments. So why could Marsha come visit whenever she wanted, and not her? Claire was his daughter, after all. Marsha had told her about the cancer. She explained to Claire that her father was very sick. The doctors had to give him strong medicine. The medicine will make him feel sicker at first, but then it would make him better. Marsha spoke in a strange, high-pitched voice. Her hair was an ugly shade of orange that reminded Claire of a pumpkin. She gave Claire a fake smile that made her feel about 2 feet tall. "I know what chemo is," Claire had snapped. She rolled her eyes. Marsha talked to her like she was 5, not 15. Didn't she know her father told her everything? She knew the chemo would shrink the tumor. She knew that it would make him lose his appetite and his hair. He might get very skinny and not have much energy. Claire imagined what chemo was doing to her father's cells. She imagined a character flowing into her father's bloodstream and zapping the cells filled with disease and lightning, like lightning. There would be sparks and popping sounds as the chemo battled the cancer. Suddenly she felt silly. She was too old to imagine that sort of thing. The doorknob turned. Claire was startled. She looked up just as Marsha entered the room. "Hi, Claire. I hoped you would be here. I brought us Chinese food," said Marsha. "I'm not hungry," said Claire, and she wondered why Marsha was being so nice. Marsha sighed. She looked at Claire, then at her husband. Marsha took his face between his palms and kissed him gently on the forehead. He shifted but didn't wake up. Claire felt embarrassed at the sight of her affection. Marsha put the food on the table. She divided the fried rice and kung pao chicken onto 2 plates. "Eat it or it'll get cold," said Marsha. Claire walked to the table reluctantly. It seemed wrong to eat in front of her father. For the past few weeks, he could only have special shakes. Claire had a sip of one, and it tasted like chalk. "You're not mad I'm here?" Claire asked. "No," said Marsha. "In fact, I think you should spend as much time with your father as you want." Claire opened her eyes wide. She tried not to blink. If she did, she feared she might cry. Then she looked at Marsha. Her eyes looked wet and glassy. Was she going to cry too? Marsha suddenly sat straight up and smiled. "Well, I'm starving. Dig in." They both picked up their food. Afterwards, Marsha handed Claire a fortune cookie. Claire carefully pulled the slip of paper from the cookie and read her fortune silently. Sometimes in sorrow, we find the greatest joy. She handed it to Marsha. Here, she said, this one should be for both of us. So before we get into our close read, let's preview our questions for today. Number 1, where does the story take place? Number 2, how does Claire respond to her father's brain cancer and hospitalization? Oops, went too far. Number 3, Claire walked over to her father's bed and straightened the pillow behind his head. She skipped swim practice to see him. Sometimes she held a cup of water up to his chin while he drank from the straw. Based on the evidence, what conclusion could be made? So again, a conclusion is a claim, something that is believed to be true. Why is he going so far? Sorry, ladies. I want to give you a headache here. Number 4, normally Claire only saw her father 2 Saturdays each month. She didn't mention those extra visits to her mother. Claire's mom hardly ever spoke to her father, especially since he married Marsha. So based on this evidence, again, what conclusion can be made? What claim can be made? Focus only on that evidence. Number 5, what is the story mainly about? Main idea. Number 6, her father's eyes didn't have the same spark. His cheekbones stuck out prominently, and he had already dozed off again. He didn't look anything alike anymore. What is the author most likely trying to convey with the description above? So again, remember, convey is just a fancy word for tell. So what is the author most likely trying to tell us with the description above? 7. Choose the answer that best completes the sentences below. Marsha explained to Claire that her father was very sick. The doctors had given him strong medicine. Blank, the medicine would make him feel sicker, but then it would make him feel better. Number 8, we're using wrap. Why does Claire try to leave the hospital room before Marsha arrives? We have to do some inferring there about their relationship. So number 9, describe how the relationship between Claire and Marsha changes in the story. Use evidence from the story to support your answer. So in the space below here, ladies, it might be a good idea to write the beginning of the story and then at the end of the story have 2 columns and kind of identify those changes before you answer that question. All right, let's scooch down. Number 10, read the following sentences. Claire carefully pulled the slip of paper from the cookie and read her fortune silently. Sometimes in sorrow we find the greatest joy. She handed it to Marsha. Here, said Claire, this one should be for both of us. This is my favorite question of the entire passage. So based on the evidence, why does Claire claim the fortune is for both of them? What you really have to do for number 10 here is really kind of step into the shoes of both of these characters. And I'm going to walk you through my marks in a moment too after we pause and you do your close read. But I want you to really think about this. This is kind of like the heart of the story, this question. Number 11, I think Miss Egg has a little typo here. So instead of saying, do you think the relationship changed? I want it to be why you think the relationship changed. So again, in number 9, you kind of describe it. And here I want you to tell me why it happens. So if you need to make some little adjustments here, kind of cross this part out. I'll show you mine in a moment too. I want it to be, why do you think Claire and Marsha's relationship changed in the story? Why? Why do you think it did? Okay. So now it is time to close read. So what you're going to do is you're going to chunk your text, circle and attempt to define unknown words, underline key information, and remember to focus on information that would help to support your answers because you've already previewed your questions. Okay, so again, you're really focusing on the words and actions of Claire and Marsha, and you're kind of keeping them in mind about that change in their relationship from the beginning to the end. You're summarizing in the margins, and you're identifying any elements that may be helpful. So now it is time to pause the video. I want you to do your close reading marks and answer your questions, and then you can resume the lesson video and check your responses against mine. Okay, ladies, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through my close reading marks, and we're going to dive into a couple of these questions. So what I did here at the top is, if I'm evaluating characters' relationships, what I want to do is I want to focus on the characters interact around one another. Is the dialogue positive or negative? What are the events surrounding the characters? And does this relationship change? So we're going into our second read. We know the relationship between Marsha and Claire changes, but now we're going to really pay attention to why it changes and kind of those clues that we know it did. Also, with working with a fictional story, theme is always something great to kind of identify. So after my first read, I identified that the theme is coming together, new beginnings, finding positivity in negative situations, and families dealing with health. So let's take a peek now. We scooch on down. I hope that we can see my marks here. Perfect. Okay. So the whole first page here, I chunked together. So I have notes kind of on both sides because I really wanted to get down a bunch of information. So keep that in mind. If you have notes on both sides, use it up. Okay. So slice means came across his face. I thought that was kind of an interesting way to put that. Slice across his face kind of almost makes you a little nervous, but it's just saying that there was just like that slice of sunlight across his face. She's critical of the nurses, right? She's like, they never pay attention to detail. She's having to fluff up his pillow, pick up the remote off the floor. His blankets are at the foot of his bed. So Claire's dad is sick in the hospital and she visits him when she can. Her parents are divorced and her dad remarried Marsha. Okay. So we learn all of that here kind of in this paragraph too. We also learn that mom and dad have a difficult relationship. She hardly ever speaks to her father, especially since he remarried. So right there, we're kind of given maybe those clues as to why Claire may be influenced by her mother, why Claire may have her own sort of opinions about the matter. Okay, so divide means split. So up here, she's talking about the division of cells and this DNA sequence. You ladies will learn all about this when you get into biology in middle school. So Claire learned about cell division in biology class. DNA is what makes you you. This answer, cells divided too quickly, which resulted in cancer. And we learn here that that tumor is in his brain. Okay, then they're kind of talking about the similarities between Claire and her dad, about how a lot of that was physical, and now that he's sick, some of those things aren't as prominent. Lectures, big talks, and we get into kind of why Claire may have some feelings towards Marsha, and we realize that she kind of gives these lectures. So I even asked right here, so why could um, lectures about, her father's cancer and then saying that Claire's father needed time alone after treatments. So I put it as like, is this reason for the conflict? Is this why maybe Claire has these types of feelings towards Marsha? And then, Marsha told him about the cancer. They're talking a little bit about chemotherapy a little bit here. And we learn that Claire wants to leave before Marsha arrives, right? She kind of wants to avoid that whole thing completely. So we're going to scooch down a little bit. And here, the effects of chemo and Claire's vision of it. So remember, she's kind of visualizing it in her brain about how it may look. So she has kind of this really great imagination, even though she says she's too old for it. I fully support her imagination. So here too, I have this big why here, right? So hi Claire, hope you'd be here. I brought us Chinese food. And she wondered why Marsha was being so nice. I'm wondering that too, like what's going on here when Claire had just told us that Marsha doesn't really like her there. So Marsha shows up and is super nice, offers dinner, and Marsha is acting differently than normal. Okay, so here she walks over the table reluctantly, meaning she kind of hesitated, right? Based on previous encounters with Marsha, she's not really thinking that this is something that she normally does. So Claire and Marsha have dinner together, and Marsha tells Claire that she should visit her dad as much as she wants. Claire reads the fortune cookie and shares the message with Marsha. Okay, so here on this last page, complete change of heart. Okay, so Marsha offers her dinner, wants her to stay, tells her that she should visit her father as much as she wants. They kind of have this very beautiful moment where they both almost cry, kind of maybe have that connection, that kind of unsaid thing about the father's sickness. And then she reads this beautiful fortune, and it just kind of works out really nicely. That Marsha hands it to her, Claire opens it, and then Claire shares it with her and says, no, I think that this is for both of us, and that the sorrow of the father has really kind of brought them some greatest joy because it gave them this beautiful relationship. So I want to talk about some additional notes that I made before we get into our questions. So the relationship at the beginning. Marsha didn't encourage Claire to visit her dad. Marsha gave lectures that Claire hated. Marsha tells her about cancer and chemo, and this frustrates Claire because her father told her already. She also learned in class. She gave Claire a fake smile that makes Claire feel small. It's a belittling action from Marsha. So the relationship at the end is that Marsha wants Claire to stay and not have lunch, have dinner, and have dinner together. Marsha encourages Claire to see her father more, and then she shares the fortune and they have a touching moment. So what caused the change? So then I was kind of thinking about this. Why did all of a sudden this happen? So Marsha is maybe coming to her senses, right? Showing much needed kindness to Claire is what she, the adult, should do, right? Claire is the one whose father is in the hospital. Marsha is the husband, but Claire's dealing with something as well, and Marsha should show her kindness. Another option, which is more of a negative, is that Dad may not be getting better. Or Marsha realized that Claire deserves to be there as much as she wants. So either the dad's getting better and she wants Claire to spend more time with her, or Marsha's realizing that, hey, Claire's his daughter. She deserves to be here. The last one I want us to maybe really talk about here, it kind of brings us into kind of our discussion about point of view. We heard about the relationship from only Claire's perspective. Maybe she embellished because she has struggled with her father remarrying after her parents' divorce. Okay, so at the beginning of the story, we hear all about it, right? All about the relationship. But we hear it from Claire's perspective. She hated the lectures. All of these things were hearsay from Claire. Maybe, maybe it was exaggerated a little. Maybe she was struggling with other things and kind of put that into Marsha, and it kind of impacted the reader because we're only getting it from her perspective. We really don't know. All right, so now let's take a look at our questions, and I'm not going to look at all of them. I really just kind of want to focus on our extended responses. So question number 8 says, why does Claire try to leave the hospital room before Marsha arrives? Okay, so we kind of know this answer, but I want that inference to be here too. So take a look at my response. Claire tries to leave the hospital room before Marsha arrives because they have an uncomfortable relationship. Bottom line, they do. And then I paraphrased my next two details. I said, we learned that Claire hates Marsha's lectures and that Marsha believes Dad should rest after the treatments without visitors. So we know that that's kind of like that conflict there. Number 9, describe the relationship, how the relationship between Claire and Marsha changes. So the relationship changes from one that was avoided, into one that was embraced. At first, Claire and Marsha avoided each other. She wanted to leave before Marsha arrived. At the end, they spent time together and even shared a meal. Apologize for my handwriting. Number 11 got very sloppy. Miss Egg got a typo, so we're going to revisit this one in just a second. But number 10 was my most favorite question. So Claire carefully picked up the slip of paper and the cookie and read the fortune silently. Sometimes in sorrow we find the greatest joy, and she handed it to Marsha. Here, said Claire. This one should be for both of us. Based on the evidence in the passage, why does Claire claim the fortune is for both of them? So I said the fortune is for both of them because both of them are in pain, but are trying to find joy in their own relationship. Claire and Marsha are both saddened by the dad's sickness. Them having dinner together is joyful because it's bringing them together. So again, sorry about the typo. It looks so sloppy down here. Why do you think Claire and Marsha's relationship changed? Okay, so I think Claire and Marsha's relationship changed because they need each other. And also, it would unite the family. Both Claire and Marsha are severely impacted by their father's cancer, the father's cancer. Each of them need the other to help them through this rough time. Claire's mother isn't involved in this area of her life, and she needs support. Also, it will show the father that his blended family is united, which may give him tremendous joy and help his recovery. Okay, ladies. So again, I apologize about number 11. I had a typo with the packets, and I didn't. I hope that this makes sense and that we're watching the video. Why do you think Claire's relationship changed and Marsha's relationship changed in the story? All right, ladies. So again, there's an electronic version of this assignment on ReadWorks. So if you would like to go on there and submit your responses, the only question that won't be on there is question 11. Yes, I added that in, and again, I added it in with a typo. I do apologize about that. But again, check your notes against mine. Revisit your responses. Make sure you have two details, okay? Make sure that your answers make sense, okay? All right, ladies. Well, I look forward to hearing your responses during our Zoom meetings this week, and I hope you all enjoy. Thank you.